Football is known as the beautiful game. It can give you incredible highs and then devastating lows. And the players on the pitch can be the hero one moment and then the villain the very next. But what happens when those footballers who occasionally break the laws of the game fall foul of the actual law and find themselves behind bars? In this video, I'm going to talk about 10 British footballers who, at one point or another, have found themselves in prison. Welcome to my channel, Andy on Crime, where I talk about high-profile criminal cases and other aspects of criminal law in England and Wales. Now, with all that being said, let's get into the video. So first up on the list is former combative midfielder turned anti-woke campaigner Joey Barton. Barton played for a number of clubs in his 15-year senior career, including Man City, Newcastle, QPR, Marseille, Rangers and 2 spells at Burnley. He was also capped once by England in 2007. That same year as his sole England cap, he was captured on CCTV in Liverpool on the 27th of December, punching one man 20 times before attacking a teenage boy who was left with broken teeth. He was charged with assault and affray and pleaded guilty to the charges. Barton had been on a Boxing Day night out with his brother, cousin and other friends in Liverpool city centre, and Joey Barton was caught on CCTV knocking an unidentified man to the ground. He then straddled him and punched him 4 or 5 times as his cousin threw food at the victim, before Barton then punched him 15 times more. Minutes later, the midfielder attacked a 16-year-old, punching him and leaving him with broken teeth. Sentencing him to 6 months in jail, Judge Henry Globe QC said it was a violent and cowardly attack. Barton was also ordered to pay £2,500 to the youth whose teeth were broken. At number 2 is winger Adam Johnson. Johnson started his career as a youth at Newcastle before moving to Middlesbrough. Whilst he was there, he had loan spells at Leeds United and Watford before he moved permanently to Man City, where he also earned 12 caps for England. His career as a footballer was effectively ended whilst he was at Sunderland, following his arrest by Durham police on the 2nd of March 2015 on suspicion of sexual activity with a girl under the age of 16. This led to him being suspended by Sunderland. He was then charged with 3 offences of sexual activity with a child under 16 and 1 offence of child grooming, and he pleaded not guilty to all of those offences. At his trial in Bradford Crown Court on the 10th of February 2016, he changed his plea to guilty to the charge of grooming and one of the charges of sexual activity with a child under 16. He continued to deny a further 2 charges of sexual activity with a child under 16. His contract with Sunderland was immediately terminated following his guilty pleas. On the 2nd of March 2016, he was found guilty by a jury of those further 2 charges. He was sentenced to 6 years in prison for those offences. Sentencing Johnson, Judge Jonathan Rose told him he had abused a position of trust and caused his victim severe psychological harm. The sexual activity with the girl happened in the footballer's Range Rover in January of 2015 after he had groomed her using social media apps. Johnson was released on the 22nd of March 2019 after serving half of his sentence and has not played professional football since. At number 3 is Duncan Ferguson. Big Dunk, as he was known, had a fearsome reputation amongst players and supporters alike. The 6'4" Scottish striker holds the joint record for the most red cards in the Premier League. His senior career started at Dundee United in 1990, before he went on to play for Rangers, Everton and Newcastle before retiring in 2006. He was also capped for Scotland 7 times. Whilst Ferguson was playing for Rangers, he had an altercation with a Raith Rovers defender, John McStay, during a match in April 1996. Ferguson spun around and caught his opponent with a headbutt, causing McStay to hit the turf. As a result of that, Ferguson was charged and ended up serving 44 days in Barlinnie prison in Glasgow a year later, at which point he had joined Everton. Now, since that incident, Ferguson has been involved in some now legendary encounters with individuals who have, very unwisely, attempted to burgle his house. In 2001, 2 burglars broke into Ferguson's home in Rufford, Lancashire. Ferguson confronted them and was able to detain one of them, who subsequently spent 3 days in hospital. The second man managed to flee but was eventually caught. Both men were sentenced to 15 months imprisonment for their actions. And in January 2003, Ferguson caught another burglar, this time at his home in Formby, Merseyside. The burglar attacked Ferguson, who retaliated. The burglar was hospitalised and later alleged that Ferguson had assaulted him, but this was dismissed by the police. Number 4 on the list is Lee Hughes. Hughes was a striker who has played for 20 clubs over a career spanning 28 years. His most notable clubs include West Bromwich Albion and Coventry City. On the 23rd of November 2003, whilst he was contracted to West Brom, Hughes lost control of his car near his home in the West Midlands, going on the wrong side of the road and colliding with a Renault Scenic. A passenger in the Renault, Douglas Graham, was killed in the incident, whilst his wife Maureen and the driver Albert Frisbee were severely injured. Hughes and passenger Adrian Smith left the scene before turning themselves into the police 36 hours later. He was arrested on suspicion of causing death by dangerous driving. He denied the charge, though later pleaded guilty to a charge of failing to stop and failing to report an accident. During his trial at Coventry Crown Court, Hughes was accused of driving too fast in wet conditions and was described as driving like a madman. He claimed the brakes on his car had locked, though tests showed that the brakes were in perfect working order and had technology installed to prevent the driver losing control. When asked where he had been in the last 36 hours after leaving the scene of the incident, Hughes stated that he would rather not say really. The prosecutor told the court that Hughes had led the scene in order to dodge a breath test. On the 9th of August 2004, Hughes was found guilty of causing death by dangerous driving and was sentenced to 6 years imprisonment. He was released from prison in August of 2007, having served half of his sentence. He was subsequently signed by Oldham Athletic on a 2-year deal and was able to resume his career as a footballer. At number 5 is Ched Evans. Evans is still playing football today for Preston North End, having played for Man City, Norwich, Sheffield United, Chesterfield and Fleetwood Town in a career which has spanned 17 years so far. Now, the story behind Evans going to prison is quite complicated and involved multiple trials, appeals and very specific legal arguments. And I've actually covered the case of Ched Evans in a separate video, but here is the too long didn't read version of why he went to prison. On the 20th of April 2012, Evans was convicted of rape at a hotel near Rhyl in Wales, which happened in May of 2011. He was sentenced to 5 years imprisonment before being released at the halfway point. After he was released, he made appeals against his conviction, which were rejected by the Court of Appeal, before his case was eventually taken up by the Criminal Case Review Commission, who launched their own appeal on Evans' behalf in October of 2015. In April of 2016, the Court of Appeal quashed his conviction and ordered a retrial. In the retrial, Evans was able to question the complainant on her sexual history, something which by default is not permitted in England and Wales and is only allowed in very specific circumstances. Following a retrial on the 14th of October 2016, Evans was found not guilty. Too late for him to have avoided spending 2.5 years in prison, but it did allow him to resume his career as a footballer. He also received £800,000 in a settlement from the legal firm which represented him at his first trial. At number 6 is perhaps a surprising name on the list, which is Arsenal legend Ian Wright. Wrighty served most of his career at Crystal Palace and Arsenal and was capped 33 times by England. The reason for his incarceration was nothing to do with violence or sexual offences like some of the others on the list. It was for something relatively minor. His failure to pay fines related to him being convicted of driving without tax or insurance. He ended up spending 32 days in Chelmsford Prison. Now, these offences predate his emergence as the footballer that we all know today. And he recalls that after being locked in the cell, he burst into tears and vowed to God to do everything in his power to make it as a footballer. And I think it's safe to say that Wrighty has honoured that promise, going on to win a number of trophies, including the double in the 97-98 Premier League season, as well as a number of other honours over a 15-year senior career. Ian Wright's case also shows that despite going to prison, there are definitely ways back for people, particularly young people, if they have the drive to succeed. At number 7 on the list is Mickey Thomas. Winger Mickey Thomas started his senior football career in 1972 at Wrexham, where he made 230 appearances, before he went on to play for Manchester United 90 times, and a number of other clubs including Everton, Brighton, Stoke, Chelsea and Leeds in a 22-year career. He was also capped 51 times by Wales. In 1993, he received an 18-month jail sentence for passing forged banknotes to young football apprentices. The forgeries came to light after the young players used them to pay for drinks during a night out at a club, and the offences took place between 1991 and January 1992. Thomas was told at the time by Judge Gareth Edwards at Warrington Crown Court that as a senior professional at Wrexham FC, he should have been setting the example to the apprentices and warning them of the dangers and temptations. Thomas now works as a pundit on Total Football, providing analysis of Manchester United matches, and sadly in February of 2019 it was announced that he had stomach cancer. At number 8 is probably a name you've not heard of, James Cotterill. Cotterill, similar to Duncan Ferguson, was jailed for something that happened on the pitch. In 2006, during an FA Cup match whilst playing for Barrow, Cotterill punched Sean Rigg of Bristol Rovers. The shot left Rigg with a double fracture of the jaw, forcing him to eat with a teaspoon and drink through a straw. After the incident was seen on Match of the Day that night, Cotterill was banned from all football by the English FA until March of 2007. In January of 2007, Cotterill was sentenced to 4 months in prison after pleading guilty to grievous bodily harm against Sean Rigg. He would be released just a few weeks later in February and was placed on house arrest, forcing him to wear an ankle bracelet around his home. At number 9 on the list is Troy Deeney. Deeney is perhaps best remembered for scoring that legendary goal during the Watford-Leicester playoff semi-final, following Leicester City's penalty miss where Watford went up the other end and Troy Deeney smashed in the winner. The former Watford and Birmingham City striker on the 25th of June 2012 was sentenced to 10 months imprisonment after pleading guilty to a charge of affray. Deeney, along with others including his brother, attacked a group of students outside of Bliss nightclub. As part of the prosecution case, a 30-second video clip was played to the court several times, clearly showing both Troy Deeney and another individual kicking out at defenceless students, one of whom received repeated blows to the head as he lay injured on the ground. One man suffered a broken jaw and another required 20 stitches as a result of the brawl. Deeney was released after serving almost 3 months of that sentence. And finally, at number 10 on the list is Tony Adams. Another Arsenal legend, English defender Tony Adams was known as Mr. Arsenal for his contributions to the club. Over his 22-year career, he helped the club win 4 league titles and 3 FA Cups, and he served as captain for 14 years. Despite this success, however, he battled with alcoholism, which started in the mid-1980s and increasingly blighted his life as he was reportedly often involved in fights in nightclubs. On the 6th of May 1990, Adams crashed his Ford Sierra into a wall in Raleigh, and when he was breathalyzed by the police, his blood alcohol level was found to be more than 4 times the legal drink drive limit. On the 19th of December that year at Southend Crown Court, he was sentenced to 4 months in prison and freed after half of his sentence on the 15th of February 1991. Now, he has become one of the most high-profile recovering alcoholics in the UK, and his battle with alcohol is detailed in his autobiography Addicted, which was released in May 1998 to enormous critical acclaim. And in 2000, Adams founded the Sporting Chance Clinic, a charity that provides support to athletes suffering from addiction. And in 2001, it was reported that he had won his battle with alcoholism and was teetotal.